in this second class? I've got the mic on. I've got the mic on. 1, 2, 3. Just as important in the second class, make sure that you're in fellowship as it is in the first class. So we're going to take our normal few moments of silence, designed to give you the opportunity for making sure that you're on worship ground. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to continue to study your word. We ask now that God, the Holy Spirit, provide everything necessary for that study, including discipline. Discipline. What am I saying? Discipline. Excuse me. Providing self-discipline, concentration, and genuine humility. We pray in Christ's name. Amen. Boy, I'm having trouble with my words today. I also noticed that I said verse 15. That's actually verse 5. So, verse 5. Because now we're ready to pick up with verse 6. And we're just going to get right to it and keep motoring on. Whoops. What happened here? Yeah, there's a lot of problems with this verse, isn't there? I'm dyslexic at night, I guess. What's that? So it looks like I don't have verse 6 and 7. I know I did. I must have grabbed the wrong one, which means the right one's sitting on my computer. Okay, well, we're just going to motor forward anyway. There's a lot of the same words, and you're going to have it. So we have verse 6 starts off and says, for. And for is the causal use of the postpositive conjunction gar, G-A-R, just like we've seen a majillion times. Whenever you hear postpositive, it's either gar or de, sometimes chi, but usually gar. For, if, and this is the conditional particle I, EI, and it's plus the indicative. It's used plus the indicative, and when it's used with an indicative, it gives us a first-class sentence. And the idea is if and it's true. Remember, if it's if and it's used with a subjunctive, that means maybe it will, maybe it won't. That's the third-class condition. Here with the indicative, meaning reality, it is the first-class condition. So it means if and it's true. For if a woman, and woman is the nominative singular of the anarthrous feminine noun gune, again, G-U-N, long E, gune. And gune means basically woman, and here it refers to a woman believer in the church age. So, for if a woman, and then underlined, is not covered, that's underlined, comma. The phrase is not covered is underlined, comma. We start with the objective negative ou, O-U, which means not. And it's the negative that absolutely shuts the door on any proposed or anticipated action. Remember the old idea, if you ask a girl out and she says may, that means no, but it means that the door is kind of open. You could ask her again, but if she goes, ooh, that means the door's closed and it's no. Okay, so if a woman is not, and then we have exactly what we had last time for covered. Remember, last time it was uncovered, so it had the A, the alpha primitive negative in front of it. But what we have is the present passive indicative, third person singular of the verb kata kalupto. Last time it had the alpha primitive negative, so it was kata kalupto, which meant not covered. Here we have covered. It means to cover or to veil. The passive voice tells us that it's the woman who receives the action of not being covered, and the indicative mood tells us that it's a standpoint of reality. And this, of course, refers to the woman's head not being covered. And once again, in this case, it has nothing to do with hats, but refers to the woman's haircut, okay, being shorter than that of the man's. And so we have for if a woman is not covered. And notice that in this case, Paul didn't use the word uncovered. He could have said if a woman is uncovered, but he makes it very clear by saying not covered. That's why we have he could have said he could have said katakalupto like he did before. In this case, he said katakalupto, which means she's not ever covered. She doesn't, and it manifests in attitude. Okay, if he used katakalupto, it could have been, oops, I'm uncovered because I forgot or whatever. Well, the first time he uses uncovered to kind of give not the benefit of the doubt, but to not be so harsh. But this time when he makes it two separate words, you have to read two separate words. It really and then he emphasizes it to boot. Okay, that means that it's really a case where you can see her volition. Okay, she is malfunctioning in her volition and deliberately not covering, okay, herself. She's deliberately cutting her hair short. It wasn't like someone snuck up and cut her hair in the middle of the night. Okay, this is a woman who is malfunctioning and going to show her I am who I am. I want to be my own self or whatever, right? And cuts her own hair. Okay, or uses her volition to have it cut. But the idea is, and you get that from the subtle difference between katakalupto versus katakalupto. Okay, so. For if a woman, underlined, is not covered, comma, let her, in fact, shear herself, period. So you see, you can see the, I don't want to say anger because that would have been a sin on Paul's part to have been angry, but you can see his emphatic attitude here. Okay, first he uses the katakalupto to say, it's her own volition. And now then he's also saying, so if you're going to do that, then just cut it all off. Sort of like, remember when we had the description of circumcision, where Paul was refuting the circumcision party. And he said, well, if circumcision is so great, because remember you had people that would follow after Paul taught, and they would come back and they said, well, Paul taught you everything except, and he's a great teacher, but he, and because of time or whatever, he didn't teach you about this. And to be a real believer, you really need to be, you need to be circumcised. And so this group of people were constantly following behind Paul and trying to teach that, oh yeah, if and he would evangelize and you'd have people that would become believers, and then they'd follow up and they would destroy these believers by telling them, oh, in order to be a believer, to really be a believer, you had to be circumcised. And finally, Paul had enough of it, remember, and he writes about the circumcision party, and he basically is telling these guys, well, if, circumcision makes you a believer and makes you a little bit holy, then cut the whole thing off and you'll be fantastically holy, right? And then, and so he gives that kind of an attitude. Well, that's what he's saying here with the woman, right? If you're going to have short hair, then just go ahead and shear it all off, right? So let her, in fact, shear herself. And here we have the aorist, middle imperative. So we have the middle voice, which tells us she's going to do it herself. Third person singular of the verb kairo, K-E-I-R, long O. So that's K-E-I-R, long O. And kairo means to shear, like to shear a sheep and cut off all the wool. I don't know if you've ever seen sheep be sheared. I have, because I raised sheep and I had to have them sheared. Okay, and depending on who would come to do the shearing, they would either use hand shears, which are like giant scissors, sort of. They're more like grass clippers. Okay, or they would use shears that were electric, like what you do with your hair, right? And they never sheared it, and left, a half an inch of wool. They went all the way down to the skin, because these guys, they took that wool and that was their money. They got profit on the wool. They'd sell the wool. To people who would turn it, take it and clean it and turn it into fabric, right? And so the more wool they could get, the better, the better they got paid. And so these guys were really quick. They would shear a lamb like that, okay, and they would get it all the way down to the skin, all the way to the point, actually, where it was kind of, thank goodness we had insurance on our sheep, because I knew a couple people who, in the process of their lamb being sheared, that was so close that it ended up slitting their throat, and the lamb died, okay? But that shearing, and it was the same in the ancient days, you wanted to get all the wool you could. Shearing means all the way down. So we're talking about a woman, not just, getting a flat top or whatever. We're talking about shearing herself, getting her head shaved, okay? So kairo, to shear. The aorist tense with the imperative gives us immediate action, which means do it now. In other words, if you're not going to do it, wear long hair, then do it now. Go get your hair cut right now all the way down to the skin, okay? Middle voice, of course, says herself, okay? In other words, a woman must do it herself, and it's easier to shear than to shave oneself in the ancient world. So it's not all the way down to, you know, where you foam it up and shave it, but it was like, get it down as close as possible, okay? And so it's actually in an imperative mood, it's an order. Paul's saying this sarcastically as an order. And this refers to making herself disgrace herself and shame herself for all to see. Make it very, very clear. The shame and disgrace is there in either case, okay? So if you're going to have short hair, you might as well go all the way. That's basically what he's saying, okay? The disgrace is there. You might as well make it obvious to everybody, okay? And then we have the word now. So letter in fact. Oh, I'm sorry, I left out the in fact part. The in fact is kai. Okay, it's the emphatic use of the conjunction kai, and which tells us truth or reality. So let her in fact shear herself. Now, since it is, and so for now we have de. It's used to give us a transition. It doesn't mean shear herself now. That would have been noon. This now is de. So we're starting after we have a comma, in other words. Let her, in fact, shear herself, comma. Now, since it is shameful, we start off with the conditional particle I plus the indicative again. And here it's used to introduce, yet again, a process of a first-class condition. And so we have since, and then the it is actually in parens with a single line through it. It's elliptical. Here, Paul is using this to introduce something that's understood and accepted by the Corinthians. Sorry, out there in TV land. Now, since it is shameful, and for shameful, we have the neuter predicate nominative singular of the anarthrous noun, eischros, and that's A-I-S-C-H-R-O-S, eischros. And eischros means basically shameful, but it doesn't just mean shameful, it means base or ugly. In other words, this isn't just shame like, ooh, I did a bad thing. This is shame like you did something really horrible, really base. You know, the base instincts, the really ugly thing to do. And women with their hair, you know, shaved or sheared, okay, are ugly. Okay, it's shameful. And this is the same adjective that we saw in 1 Corinthians 14:35, which was talking about a woman communicating in church, right? Remember, it was shameful for the woman to communicate in church. Since it is shameful for a woman, I think I already gave you for the woman part. Okay, for a woman, we have the dative singular of the anarthrous feminine noun, and you could probably put it in there by yourself now. It's gune, once again. G-U-N-E, gune, like the bird. Like Jack used to say, every time he would say that, right? You know, the Goonie bird. I would remember the PBS show where the guy's going down the beach and here's these Goonie birds and they're trying to take off while he's running down the beach. You know, they can't quite do it and they're flopping over and but anyway, that's not what it means. It means woman. Yeah, it refers to the female in the ancient world by interpretation. Of course, the female church age believers by application. Okay, and here it's a dative. It's a dative of disadvantage. In other words, it's to your disadvantage as a female to be doing this. Okay, so far we have, for if a woman is not covered, let her in fact shear herself. Now, since it is shameful for a woman to be sheared, and here we have the neuter accusative singular of the definite article, which actually goes to the following infinitive and serves to make the infinitive more specific. Okay, and then we have the word kairo again, which means to shear. The aorist tense gives us, in this case, punctiliar action. It means right now, so to be sheared. Okay, or, and he goes even farther, or to be shaved, comma. So now, since it is shameful for a woman to be sheared or to be shaved, and to be the or is a, like we had before. It's just the long letter E. Okay, a is a disjunctive, meaning or. And again, it's followed by the aorist middle infinitive of xurao. X-Z-U-R-A, long O, xurao. And xurao means shave, just like it did before. Okay, or to be shaved, comma, let her be covered, period. So Paul's offering up the opposite. Now, since it is shameful for a woman to be sheared or to be shaved, let her be covered. And we have the present passive imperative. That's the idea of in order again. Third person singular, and this time we have the same verb, kata kalupto. K-A-T-A. L-U-P-T, long O, kata kalupto, meaning to cover or to veil. And here it refers to having her hair long enough to come down over the ears and longer than that of the right man. The present tense of the imperative denotes a continuing action, so it means to be covered and to stay covered. Okay? And the passive voice tells us that this subject, which is a woman, is responsible to receive the action. Okay, so she's supposed to let her hair grow to where it's covered. And again, it is an order. It's an imperative of command. So verse 6 altogether. 4, if a woman is not covered, let her in fact shear herself. Now, since it is shameful for a woman to be sheared or to be shaved, let her be covered. And this refers to the hair, again, because this is the idea of in order to show the proper chain of command and respect, okay, you have your hair longer than your man's, okay? And the idea being that it's to happen all the time. The only way you can have continuous prayer, okay, and be able to continually pray is for your hair to be longer than your husband's, okay, for you to do it properly. And so that doesn't work by wearing a veil or wearing, we don't wear burqas. That's not what we're talking about. Okay, and I can remember, I grew up Catholic, and I can remember at that time period, it was before the new masses and the modern Catholicism, okay, and so there was still the older traditions, and particularly growing up in an Italian family. My mom, first of all, we always had a St. Christopher medal that was magnetically attached to the metal dashboard of our car, because that's what they had back then. If you got in an accident, you lost your face because you ran into the metal dashboard, not the plastic dashboard, with an airbag. Okay, so you had a metal dashboard. So we had a St. Christopher's medal stuck to the metal dashboard, and my mom always had a veil in the glove box, and gloves, so that when we went to church, okay, she could pull the veil out, put the veil on to go into church with her gloves, right? And that's what the women did. They wore a veil because this verse was misinterpreted to mean that they had to be covered with a veil. And the idea is, no, it's your hair. As long as you have long hair, that meets the requirement. That's what we're talking about here. You don't have to turn around and wear a veil. Okay? And you certainly don't have to wear a burqa. Okay. Verse 7. Verse 7. So then, comma. And this time, this is the inferential use of the same postpositive conjunction gar, the pirate's favorite conjunction. And here it's used to introduce a very obvious conclusion based on what Paul has already said. So he's giving us the conclusion. So then, on the one hand, and here we have that Greek figure of speech, which we've done before. It's a classical Greek. It starts off with the correlative idiom men, and then it goes de, right? If you have first, second, or second, third, fourth, but when you do on the one hand and on the other, you have men, and then ... and then de. And it means men, meaning on the one hand, and de on the other hand. And of course, here we have the first part, men, meaning on the one hand. A man. So then, on the one hand, a man. This is the nominative singular of the anarthrous masculine noun you'd expect. On air, once again, an, long er. And here it's the church age believer, the male church age believer. And again, from the standpoint of the chain of command. A man ought not to be having his head covered, comma. So then, on the one hand, a man ought not to be having his head covered. And here that whole phrase, it's an idiomatic construction. Take it slow enough here. We have the objective negative ou, ou, meaning not. Okay, and then we have the present active indicative, third person singular of aphilo. Aphilo. O-P-H-E-I-L long O. Aphilo. And aphilo actually means to owe or to be indebted to. And then it's extended, especially with the infinitive, to indicate obligation. And this is what we have here. This is the meaning we have here. See, when you're indebted to somebody, you have an obligation to them. And so the idea here is an obligation. Okay? The present tense is used to denote a condition that perpetually exists. So this means that it can always be taken for granted. And the active voice tells us that the man is seen as having this obligation. The indicative mood looks at the obligation from the standpoint of reality. So again, this is a real situation. The man should not have this obligation. And then we have the present passive infinitive of the verb we've been seeing on and on and on, kata kalupto. K-A-T-A-K-A-L-U-P-T long O. Kata kalupto. Meaning to veil or cover. Again, this refers to hair that comes down over the ears or hangs below the ears. And since the idea here is one of general status, there's no issue in this case with regard to a hat, although the idea is you still can't pray with a hat on. The present tense here denotes continuing action. The active voice tells us that the man is the one producing it. And then we have the accusative singular of the articular feminine noun, kephale, once again, meaning head. And so literally, when you put it all together, it's kind of bizarre because what you have is a man, he ought to be having covered the head. Okay? So since that doesn't really sound real good in the English, a man, he ought to be covering the head. It ought not to be having his head covered. So then, on the one hand, a man ought not to be having his head covered. Since he exists, and you can put in parens with a single line through it, this is for the in reality, as. And so in reality, those two words are in parens with a single line through it. And here we have an anarthrous present participle, masculine nominative singular of huparcho, H-U-P-A-R-C-H, long O, huparcho, which means to exist, to be present, or to be at one's disposal, but the word has connotation of being in reality, with emphasis on reality. In other words, to exist with emphasis on reality. So he really does exist, okay, this way. I gave you the example at one time of one of my favorite movies called Secondhand Lions. And in the end of the movie, there's a little boy that's talking to his father, and his father is talking about these two old men that had been telling this tale throughout the story, right? And at the end of the movie, the little boy says to his father, "Oh, you mean those people that Grandpa talked about really lived?" And the grandson, well, the nephew of the older people said, yes, they really lived, right? Meaning that they really had a fantastic existence, what we call zao. They lived with, with a lot of fullness of life, right? These gentlemen had one heck of a full life. But the idea is reality, yes. You may have thought those stories were not real, but they really existed. That's kind of the thing we have here. This is a real existence, okay? Since he exists as, okay? It's a causal participle. Okay, which means that the idea is that he's caused to exist. Okay, so since he exists in reality as, and then we have underlined these next words, next 6 words: the image and glory of God, semicolon. See, this whole passage, by the way, if you ever run into a strong woman's liver, I don't know what they call themselves nowadays. That's what they used to call them in the old days. Now they're just feminists, or as one of the radio announcer calls them, feminazis. But anyway, the idea is that this is the verse that they hate. This passage is the one that they absolutely hate, that makes Paul a real chauvinist. Paul couldn't possibly have been an apostle and written words like this because he's a chauvinist. Okay, no, this is from the truth of the Word of God. Okay, the man is the image and glory of God. Okay, we have the predicate nominative singular of icon, E-I-K long O-N, icon. And it means image or likeness. And here it refers to man's creation. In other words, man being created as one in essence, but many in personality. See, we are one in essence and many in personality. God is one in essence and 3 in personality. Now, God has one essence. He has the one perfect essence. Man has one essence in terms of mentality, volition, emotion, consciousness. Okay, self-consciousness, and that idea. We don't have the same. We don't have the same essence. Okay. But we have the same type of essence, okay? Icon, by the way, if you look at it close enough, you can see that's where we get icon from in the English, right? So the things on your desktop, which are icons, are images, okay, of something that the software is supposed to do. If they do a good job at making the icon, it looks like what it's supposed to do. Like my icon for pages looks like a page with someone writing on it, but some icons are really stupid because you can't figure out what it would do, even if you looked at it forever, right? But anyway, so we have icon here. We expect the article and don't get it. Okay, so that adds emphasis. We have the continuative use next of the conjunction kai, and. So we have the image and so we're getting at a compound object. Then we have the predicate nominative singular of the anarthrous feminine noun we've seen before, doxa, D-O-X-Z-A, doxa. Which means basically brightness, splendor, radiance. And then it's extended to mean glory, glory in general. And it refers to the man as being designed to reflect God's glory. Remember, we are supposed to have the Shekinah glory emitting from us. We're supposed to be functioning properly and have that glory coming out and shine. You're supposed to, like when they talk about a pregnant woman has a certain glow, believers are supposed to have a certain glow too. And that comes from being able to handle pressures in life, being able to sit back and relax and enjoy the fact that God is going to take care of everything. That you do your objective responsibility and God will do the rest. And that gives you a certain amount of glow. That gives you a relaxed physical demeanor, just like your relaxed mental attitude. Okay? That's one way of displaying this Shekinah glory. Okay? We're supposed to reflect the glory. In other words, we're supposed to be properly oriented to, properly responding to, and hence reflecting the glory of God. We're to manifest the glory of God in the angelic conflict in the sphere of its creation. Okay? Of course, Adam originally did that in the garden before the fall. Okay, and here the man is to be viewed as the one in the chain of authority, in the chain of command concept, as the one who is reflecting what is in the head above him. Okay, and then we have the genitive singular of the anarthrous masculine noun theos, which means God. Okay, so we have doxa, and then genitive, of course, gives us the of concept, and then theos is God, with emphasis on the essence of God. Since he exists in reality as the image and glory of God, the whole thing is underlined. Due to hyperbaton, it's out of place. What's underlined is the phrase, the image and glory of God. Excuse me. Then we're going to have the other men, remember, then de. So we're going to have the de, the correlative conjunction de. So that gives us, but on the other hand, comma. So on the one hand, but on the other hand. The woman and here you have gune again. You can do almost all 11 verses here with about 5 words. Gune, kafale, katakalupto, katakalupto, katakalupto. You know. But gune is a woman, of course, and it means here the believer woman. And in our particular category, right man, right woman, we're talking about the right woman. Okay? But on the other hand, the woman is, we have I, me, E-I-M-I, I, me. This time it's not in parens, it's actually given to us. Is means to be or to, I mean means to be or exist. It's the status quo verb. Okay. And here it's a what's called a static, so, or gnomic, and that means that she always is. Okay. As long as she's functioning this way, you can take it for granted that she is going to be this. And then we have underlined. The next 5 words are underlined. The glory of the man, period. That whole thing is underlined. The glory of the man, period. Here, we start with the predicate nominative singular of the word we just saw, doxa, D-O-X-Z-A, doxa, meaning bright, splendor, or radiance. If I ever get another dog, maybe I'll call it Dogza. See? Huh? Pretty cute, huh? Dog's a dog. Anyway, that's what my little dog was. She was bright and splendor, and she was glorious. Anyway, Dogza means glory in general and refers to the woman as being designed, in this case, to reflect the glory of the man. Okay? In other words, to be properly oriented to him, properly oriented to his authority, properly respond to him and to respond to his authority, and hence to manifest a proper function as his glory in the angelic conflict. So when the woman, the wife, is not responding to the husband's authority, when she's not responding to the husband's position over her, okay, then she's not responding in glory. She's not reflecting his glory. She's reflecting her arrogance, her malfunction, her disgrace. Okay? So she is the glory of the man. So we have doxa, and then we have the genitive singular of aner again. The genitive gives us the of, the, and aner, once again, is the church age believer as a man. So, all together, we have, so then, on the one hand, a man ought not to be having his head covered, since he exists in reality as the image and glory of God. But, on the other hand, the woman is the glory of the man. And here, the idea is that the man manifests the understanding of his status and his responsibility towards his authority, okay, in the chain of command by having short hair, and the woman manifests the understanding of her status and responsibility toward her authority in the chain of command by having long hair. Now we're going to see some more fundamental information associated with this. Verse 8. Continuing on. 4. Once again, we have the pirate word gar, postpositive conjunction gar. And here we're going to introduce yet another justification for the statement that was just made. For man, you can probably guess what that is, on air. And this time it doesn't have the article. And it refers to, this case, to generic. It refers to man as the male part of the human race. With the article, it gives us that special topic like a believer husband or a believer. Here, without the article, we just have man as a member of the human race. For man does not originate from woman, comma. Does not originate from woman, comma. Now here, of course, we're actually talking about origination. We're talking about the Garden of Eden, okay? Because as far as I know, I came from my mother's womb, okay? The idea, though, here, though, does not originate from woman, is Paul speaking about the Garden of Eden, of course, giving us the original concept of man and woman. We have an idiomatic construction. The objective, we start with the objective negative ou, once again, meaning not, ou. Closing the door, meaning never, okay? Then we have I, me. So it's a third person singular, the status closed verb, I, me. So that gives us the does, okay? Does not, in this case. And here's the following prepositional phrase. The idea is to originate, okay? We have the preposition ek, giving us out from. And then the ablative singular of the nartheist feminine noun, gune. So we have does not exist out from the woman, which means does not originate out from the woman. And here with the article, it's generic and refers to the female. And so literally we have not he is man out from woman. And this, of course, refers to the actual origination of the human race. The fact that Adam was created first and then the woman came from Adam, not the other way around. But man does not originate from woman. And then we have but. It's the strong conjunction Allah. And here it's used to introduce an obvious contrast. Okay. So but, and that should be underlined, sorry, but underline, comma. Woman from man. And we have the ellipsis. We could put the ellipsis in there, but we don't really need it in English. In other words, we could say, but woman originated from man. We don't need that, though. We have another idiomatic construction. We start here with the nominative singular of the nartheist feminine noun, gune, once again. And it's generic, once again, for the female part of the human race. Then we have the preposition ek plus the ablative, again, which means out from. And when we say ablative, it means that the next word is in the ablative. We have the ablative singular of the nartheist masculine noun, on air, once again, the man. Okay? In other words, here, without the article, it's generic and refers to man as the male part of the human race. There's an elliptical verb here, but it's not needed to be inserted in the English. Okay, and so the full thought is woman originates from the man, but we just have woman from the man. So far, for a man does not originate from woman, excuse me, not a man, for man does not originate from woman, but, underline, comma, woman from man. Verse 9. For you see, comma. Once again, the postpositive conjunction, explanatory use of the postpositive conjunction gar, used to give us an explanation. For you see, and then we have the emphatic use of the conjunction kai. In fact, comma. So for you see, comma, in fact, comma. So the Greek, just like the English, you know, when you want to make something emphatic, you punch it a couple times. That's what Paul's doing here. You see, in fact, right? In other words, what I'm going to tell you is the truth. Listen up. Listen to what I'm saying. Don't disregard it. Okay? For you see, in fact, man, on air again. So he's going to tell us the truth. For you see, in fact, man was not created and that was underlined. Sorry about that. Was not created is underlined. We have the objective negative oo, once again, not. And then we have the aorist passive indicative, third person singular of the verb ktidzo. Ktidzo, that's K-T-I-D-Z long O, ktidzo. Those Greeks, boy, they can come up with some letters that they put together. Gerao and ktidzo, okay? Sounds like something you do when you're a little boy and you have, a fake gun, Anyway, ktidzo. Third person singular of the verb ktizo, and it means basically to create. Remember, it's one of our creation verbs. And here it refers generally to bringing into existence. And it's bringing into existence the man as the male part of the human race. And here, of course, it's with emphasis on Adam as the first man in this creation. And this negated verb is in the emphatic position. So we have hyperbaton. So this whole thing is underlined. In fact, man was not created. And here you go, women, despite what some of the women think, okay, because of the woman, comma. Because of the woman. So man was not created because of the woman, comma. So you have a lot of women who think that men are extraneous. We don't really need men. The only reason we need men is to have kids. Otherwise, this would be a perfect world. Men are they're ugly. They're nasty. They say foul words. They make weird smells. They cause us to get into wars. Right? They do all of these bad things. And so if we could just, if we just could live without them, we'd be fine. That's not what Paul's saying here. Paul's saying it's the other way around. Okay. Now, the more you see commercials like that stupid Toyota commercial, that guy probably doesn't deserve to exist. I hate that ad. I hate that. I talk about it every time I can. I dislike that ad with Pat the intern. Okay, the scary thing is people like that use our oxygen. They shouldn't be using our air. Okay, yeah, anyway. For you see, in fact, man was not created because of the woman. And we start off with the preposition dia plus the accusative. And dia plus the accusative means basically because of. And then we have the accusative singular of the articular feminine noun gune. And it's been anarthrous up to this point where we were talking about women and woman and talking about the women in general. But here we have the woman, okay? And so since we have the article here, what we're really talking about is the first woman. And so we have the first woman looked at or perceived as being created. In this case, created. We're going to see created for the man. And what Paul is doing is he's reminding these individuals, okay, of the creation history, remember, I hate to use the word story. People talk about, oh, the creation story and the flood story and, the Isaac story. And all these aren't stories. These are history. These are reality. These actually happened. They're not stories. Yes, they were passed down through verbal tradition, until they were written down by Moses. But the idea is they aren't stories. They're history. Adam and Eve existed. Adam was created, and Eve was created out of Adam. Okay, despite what our society today wants to teach us, that we came from a sludge pool of amino acids that had just the right amount of heat, and turned into some kind of slime that turned into multicelled creatures that climbed out of the muck to turn into apes that swung from trees that turned into mankind. Right? That's not the way it was. Okay? Mankind was created. And so we're talking about the creation of Adam and Eve. And here we're talking about Eve. And he's talking about the original creation and the fact that the woman was not created. The man was not created because of the woman. So far we have, for you see, in fact, man, that's Adam, was not created because of the woman. Whoever was not created was underlined, because of the woman, comma. But, underline, comma. So we have Allah. Woman. In this case, note that it doesn't have the article. We didn't say the woman. We have woman. So Paul's changed again. Here we have the nominative singular of the anarthrous, feminine noun gune, which means basically woman, and this time without the article, it's generic. In this case, it refers to woman as the female part of the human race. So this means women, all women. Woman here now means all womans. Okay. It's in the singular, but the idea is you get it, right? Because of the woman, okay? But woman, in singular, woman, because of the man, period. Here we have the preposition dia plus the accusative, giving us because of. And the accusative that I'm talking about then is we have the accusative singular, in this case of the articular masculine noun, on air, once again. This once again refers to the first man. And Paul says that this is true, okay, that we have the original creation. And the idea here is the female of the sex, not just Eve, but the whole idea is the female of the sex was brought into existence because the male was already created and needed the female to be complete. Okay? So females, you complete your man. We saw that before in many passages as we were studying right man, right woman. Okay, you complete, you fulfill, you satisfy the man. And as a result of man's need for fulfillment and satisfaction, all of womankind was created. And consequently, every man, okay, there's supposed to be a woman who fulfills and completes. So the idea is the male was already created, needed the female to complete, help, delight, as in we had in Genesis 2:18, which we saw up very early in this category. The man needed a helper that perfectly matched him. And once again, there's an obvious ellipsis here. We don't need to put it in, but the idea is, but woman was created for the man. Instead, we just have because of the man. So verse 9 all together. For you see, in fact, man was not created, underline, because of the woman, comma, but, underline, comma, woman because of the man, period. So female kind came into existence because man, needed them. Okay? And that's still the case. Men who think that they don't need women, remember we know Paul goes even further, and in Romans, he teaches us that men become homosexual because they give up the women. Okay, and usually that's a result of the women malfunctioning and not completing the man. See, the man needs to have completeness. The man needs to have satisfaction. The man needs to be fulfilled. And if there aren't any women that are going to do it, then the old sin nature takes over and the man turns to the man. So women, when you look around and you say, what happened to all the good men? You have to look inwardly in many cases because of the uprising, if you will, that we had of feminism for the last 10 or 15 years, and the idea that men are supposed to come to get in touch with their female side and all of that kind of stuff, right? And when the woman wants a tender, caring, sensitive man instead of a man, pure and simple. Okay, it's driven our little boys who have grown up into teenagers and into adults to not be the men that they're supposed to be. And then you look around at the tremendous amount of homosexuality, and you can be thankful for that. That's what you've done. I, had a family gathering yesterday, and several of my family, right, are, two of them are teachers, and they're talking about stuff that is happening in junior high and grade school. They're just absolutely atrocious. You go, where are the parents? Letting a 10-year-old decide that they're the wrong gender. What does a 10-year-old know about gender? You smack the kid upside the head and say, grow up, boy. Become a boy. But it's, no, mom is going to let him express himself, right? And then the other kids were talking about now the push is on that you have to, and this is ridiculous. And this, you guys are not going to believe this. If you haven't heard it, and I'm the first one to tell you this, grab the desk because you're going to fall over, okay? And that is that parents are now being told, okay, that they have to get the permission or the okay to change their kids' diapers. Are you comfortable with me taking off your diaper? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Who paid for the food that ended up filling that diaper? Who's responsible for raising you? This is ridiculous. Kids don't have these kinds of rights. Okay, but anyway, I'm getting way off track. The idea here that is the woman is supposed to fulfill the man. And when they don't, that's when, like I said, when they don't, then we have the problems that we're going through. Same thing for the men. Right? If the men aren't treating the women properly, then women turn to women. And so we've got this whole upside down. When women are looking for a man, and they can't find a man because they're all feminine, okay, because they were raised to be these effeminate little wimps to show their feminine side, then they turn to the masculine acting woman. Right? Why is it that in these relationships there always appears to be the one woman that looks strong? It's because that's what's attracted the other woman. She was looking for a man, couldn't find one, so she finds a surrogate. That's what happens. Okay? Anyway, for this reason, go back up to verse 9. I was about ready to give you all of 10. Okay? For, you see, in fact, man was not created because of the woman, but woman because of the man. Okay? Verse 10. In verse 10, because I've been yakking and telling you about all these horrible things, we don't have time to finish verse 10, and I don't want to get started in the middle of it. So this is where we're going to call it quits today, and we will pick up with verse 10. We actually made pretty good progress from verse 4 to verse 10. That was 6 verses. Maybe we'll finish by next Sunday. Okay? But I'm not going to worry about it. We will finish when we finish. Okay? So if you'll stand, we'll go ahead and close with a song. You don't have to go very far from where you were.